She was betrayed, blinded, and cast aside as a worthless shadow of the pack. But destiny has a different plan when the Alpha King arrives to claim what is rightfully his. Follow her incredible journey from total darkness to the throne as she proves that a fated bond is stronger than any act of cruelty. The night Elira Moonfall saw the truth, the forest was too quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. She hadn't meant to be there. The sacred grounds were forbidden after moonrise. Everyone knew that. But she had followed the voices, low and urgent, slipping through the trees like shadows that didn't belong. Something in her chest had twisted the moment she heard them. Not curiosity. Instinct. Warning. She moved carefully, her steps light against the damp earth, weaving between ancient trees until the clearing opened before her. And then, she froze. The elders stood in a circle beneath the dying moon, their cloaks heavy, their heads bowed. Not in reverence, but in secrecy. At the center of them was a man.
Bound.
Bleeding. An alpha. Not of their pack. Elira's breath caught in her throat as she pressed herself behind the rough bark of a tree, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain it would give her away. "This ends tonight," one of the elders said, his voice cold, stripped of the warmth he wore during daylight hours. "No one must ever know." The bound alpha struggled weakly, his eyes glowing faintly gold despite the blood running down his face. "You think killing me will bury it?" he rasped. "The truth always." A blade flashed.
Silver.
It sank into his chest before he could finish. Elira's body went rigid.
No.
No, this wasn't justice. This wasn't law. This was murder. The kind forbidden even among wolves. Her stomach twisted violently as the air shifted. Thick, wrong, poisoned by something darker than death itself. The elders stepped back in unison, their hands raised as they began to chant.
Low.
Ancient. Dangerous. The ground beneath them pulsed. And then she saw it. Not with fear. Not with doubt. But with absolute, horrifying clarity. The power they were invoking didn't belong to the pack. It wasn't sacred. It was stolen. A dark force twisted around the dying alpha's body, pulling something from him. Not just life. Something deeper. His glow flickered violently, then dimmed, as if his very essence was being ripped apart and claimed. Claimed by them. Elira's fingers dug into the tree bark as her breathing turned shallow. This was how they held power. Not through strength. Not through honor. But through theft. Through lies. Through blood that wasn't theirs. A branch snapped beneath her foot. The sound cracked through the clearing like thunder. Silence fell instantly. The chanting stopped. Every head turned. Slowly. Deliberately. Toward her. Elira's heart dropped. "No," she whispered, stepping back, but it was too late. One of the elders stepped forward, his eyes locking onto hers through the darkness. And for the first time, she saw no kindness in them. Only calculation. Only fear. "She saw it," he said quietly. The words felt like a death sentence. The others shifted, their expressions hardening as the truth settled between them. Elira shook her head, her voice trembling despite the strength in her spine.
This
isn't our way." No one answered. Not with words. But the decision had already been made. It passed between them in silence.
Cold.
Final. The elder's lips curled slightly as he took a step closer. "You were never meant to be here, Elira Moonfall." Her pulse roared in her ears as she backed away, the weight of their gaze suffocating, trapping. And in that moment, she understood. This wasn't something she could expose. This wasn't something she could survive. Because the truth she had seen tonight was something they would never allow her to tell. They didn't chase her. That was the first thing Elira noticed. As she stumbled backward through the trees, breath tearing from her lungs, she expected the sound of pursuit, the snap of branches, the thunder of boots, the howl of wolves. But there was nothing. Only silence. And that silence was worse. Because it meant they didn't need to chase her. They already knew she wouldn't escape. A force slammed into her back. Invisible.
Crushing.
Elira cried out as her body was yanked off her feet and dragged across the forest floor, leaves and dirt clawing at her skin. She fought, twisting, reaching for anything to hold on to, but it was useless. The power gripping her wasn't physical. It was theirs. Cold hands seized her arms as she was dragged back into the clearing. The elders stood exactly where she had left them, as if time itself had paused for her capture. "You shouldn't have run," one of them said softly. Elira's chest heaved as she lifted her chin, defiance burning through her fear. "You murdered him," she said, her voice shaking but unbroken. "You stole his power." A flicker of something dark passed through their expressions, not guilt, annoyance. And now, another elder murmured, stepping forward. "You've seen too much." Two enforcers forced her to her knees. The earth was cold beneath her, grounding her just enough to realize. No one was coming. Not her pack. Not her family. No one. The truth hit harder than the force that had dragged her back. They had already chosen her. Or their secret. Elira swallowed hard, her voice quieter now, but no less fierce. "I won't stay silent." The clearing fell still. Then, a low, humorless chuckle. "You won't have to," the elder said. He lifted his hand, and the air shifted. The same dark energy from before crept along the ground, slithering toward her like something alive. Elira's breath caught as it curled around her wrists, her shoulders, her throat, tightening, binding. "Not to kill. To control." "No," she whispered, her body tensing as panic clawed its way up her spine. A strip of black cloth was brought forward.
Clean.
Deliberate. Prepared. Her heart stuttered. "You don't understand," she said quickly, desperation breaking through now. "If the Alpha King finds out, he won't," the elder cut in sharply. The cloth was pressed against her eyes. Elira thrashed, but the shadows held her in place, forcing her still as the fabric wrapped tightly around her head, sealing out the world. Darkness swallowed everything instantly. Too complete. Too final. Her breathing turned ragged. "Please." The chanting began again. Louder this time. Closer. The power surged. It wasn't like before. This wasn't them taking something from another. This was them taking something from her. Pain exploded behind her eyes. Blinding. Burning. Elira screamed as it felt like her vision was being ripped out from the inside, like light itself was being torn away, piece by piece. Colors shattered into nothing. Shapes dissolved. The last flicker of the world she knew vanished into a crushing void. And then, nothing. No light. No shadow. No form. Only endless dark. Her scream broke into a sob as her body went limp, the fight draining from her in a single, devastating moment. "It's done," someone said. The chanting stopped. The shadows loosened. Elira collapsed forward, her hands hitting the cold earth as her chest heaved violently.
Blind.
Truly blind. Her fingers clawed at the ground, searching for something, anything, but there was nothing to find. No edges. No shapes. No world. Just emptiness. Footsteps approached her slowly. Measured. Final. A hand gripped her chin, lifting her face just enough for the elder's voice to settle over her like a sentence. "You should have stayed loyal to your pack." Elira's lips trembled, but no words came out this time, because for the first time, she understood. This wasn't punishment. This was erasure. And as they released her and stepped away, leaving her alone in a darkness that would never lift, the deepest betrayal wasn't that they took her sight. It was that they believed she was nothing without it. Morning came. Elira knew it not by light, but by sound. Distant voices. Footsteps. The faint rustle of life returning to the pack, as if nothing had happened at all. As if she had not been broken the night before. She lay where they had left her for a long time, her body curled against the cold earth, her fingers still dug into the soil like she could anchor herself to something real. But nothing felt real anymore. Not the air. Not her own breath. Not even the steady beat of her heart. Because the world
Was gone.
Slowly, painfully, she pushed herself upright. The motion was clumsy, uncertain, her balance shifting as panic flickered through her chest. She reached out instinctively, but her hands grasped only emptiness. No shapes. No shadows. No sense of direction. Just endless dark. A sharp breath escaped her lips as she steadied herself, forcing the rising fear back down. If she let it take hold now, she would never stand again. And she refused to fall. Not here. Not like this. One step, then another. Each movement hesitant, fragile, like she was learning how to exist all over again. The forest floor shifted beneath her feet, unfamiliar and treacherous, without sight. Every sound felt louder now, sharper. Twigs snapping somewhere in the distance, leaves whispering as something passed through them. She followed the noise, not because she trusted it, but because she had nothing else. By the time she reached the edge of the pack grounds, her breathing was uneven, her body trembling from the strain. Voices grew clearer, closer, conversations overlapping, casual, normal, unbothered. Elira stepped forward. The moment her foot crossed into the open, the voices faltered. Silence spread. Not shocked, not concerned, just quiet, like something unwelcome had entered their space. She's alive? Someone muttered. Elira stilled. The words hit harder than the ritual had.
Alive.
Not Elira. Not one of them.
Just alive.
She shouldn't be here, another voice said, colder this time. She can't see, a third added, almost dismissively. What does it matter? A quiet laugh followed. Low, cruel. Her fingers curled at her sides, nails biting into her palms as she held herself upright, refusing to let them hear the crack forming in her chest. They knew, all of them, and no one had come.
No one had stopped it.
No one cared. Elira swallowed, forcing her voice to steady. I'm still part of this pack. The words felt fragile the moment they left her lips. A pause. Then footsteps approached, slow, deliberate. She could feel the presence in front of her, heavy with judgment. No, the voice said simply. You're not. Something inside her went still. You have no rank, no purpose, the man continued. You can't hunt. You can't fight. You can't even see. Each word landed with precise cruelty. You're a liability. A breath trembled in her throat, but she held it back, refusing to give them the satisfaction of breaking. I belong here, she said again, quieter now but firmer. For a moment there was nothing.
Then,
A shove.
sudden.
Unforgiving. Elira stumbled backward, her footing lost instantly. She hit the ground hard, pain flaring through her palms and knees as the impact knocked the air from her lungs. Laughter followed. Not loud, but enough. Enough to echo. Enough to stay. Get used to the dark, someone said coldly. It's all you have now. Footsteps retreated one by one until the space around her emptied again. But the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was hollow. Elira remained on the ground, her body still, her breathing shallow as the weight of it all settled over her. Not just the blindness, not just the pain, but the truth. She wasn't part of the pack anymore. She wasn't even seen as a person. She was something discarded, something forgotten, a ghost. Her fingers slowly tightened against the dirt beneath her, grounding herself in the only thing she could still feel. They thought she was nothing now, powerless,
Broken.
but beneath the silence, beneath the darkness, something in her hadn't died. Not yet. The day the Alpha King arrived, the air changed before anyone saw him. It pressed down on the pack like a storm that hadn't broken yet, heavy, charged, impossible to ignore. Elira felt it from the edge of the grounds, where she sat alone beneath a withered tree. Her world was still darkness, endless and suffocating, but something shifted within it. A pulse she couldn't explain. A low, distant hum that didn't belong to sound. Her fingers stilled against the rough bark. Something was coming. Across the clearing, the pack gathered in hurried formation. Voices dropped to whispers, movements sharpened with urgency. The Alpha King. He wasn't expected. Why is he here? Fear threaded through every word. Elira tilted her head slightly, listening. Not just to them, but beyond them. The strange pressure in her chest grew stronger, tightening, pulling at something buried deep inside her. Then, footsteps. Not rushed. Not uncertain. Each step landed with quiet authority, echoing across the stone and earth like a claim already made. The moment he crossed into their territory, the world seemed to hold its breath. Ronan Blackthorn. Elira didn't need sight to know he was there. She felt him, a presence vast and unyielding, like standing at the edge of something powerful enough to destroy everything in its path, and choosing not to. The pack bowed. Every single one. Except her. She remained where she was, unmoving, unseen at the far edge of it all. You called for counsel. His voice cut through the silence, deep and controlled. Yet I arrived to find tension instead of order. No one answered immediately. Elira could almost hear the elders calculating, reshaping their lives before speaking. There have been minor disturbances, one of them finally said. Nothing that requires your concern. A pause followed, long enough to feel dangerous. Ronan didn't respond right away. And in that silence, something shifted again, sharp this time. Focused. Elira's breath caught. It was subtle, but unmistakable. His attention moved. Not across the crowd. Not toward the elders. Toward her. Her pulse quickened, a strange awareness crawling beneath her skin. It made no sense. She was hidden, removed, nothing more than an afterthought to everyone else. But he felt it. Whatever this was. Whatever she was. You're mistaken, Ronan said quietly. The words weren't loud, but they landed like a crack in stone. Something here demands my attention. A ripple of unease spread through the pack. Elira's fingers tightened against the ground as that invisible pull grew stronger, sharper, drawing a line between them she couldn't see, but couldn't deny. Footsteps shifted. Not away. Closer. Each one deliberate. Each one certain. No, one of the elders said quickly, tension bleeding into his voice. There's no need. There is, Ronan cut in. The authority in his tone wasn't challenged.
Couldn't be.
The footsteps continued, closing the distance. Elira's breath turned shallow as the pressure in her chest intensified, no longer distant but overwhelming, like standing too close to fire without feeling the burn yet.
He stopped.
Right in front of her. The space between them felt
alive.
For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, lift your head, he said. The command was quiet, but it wasn't a request. Elira hesitated, not out of defiance, but because something deep inside her stirred at the sound of his voice, something she didn't understand, something that made her chest ache in a way that had nothing to do with pain. Slowly, she obeyed. Her chin rose slightly, her blindfolded gaze aligning with where she felt him standing. Silence stretched between them again.
Thick.
Unspoken. And then, his breath shifted. Just slightly. As if something had just become clear to him. Behind him, the elders stood frozen, their unease turning into something sharper.
Fear.
Because, in that moment, the Alpha King didn't see a discarded shadow. He sensed something far more dangerous. And, whatever it was, he wasn't going to ignore it. The space between them felt too small, too charged. Elira could hear it, the subtle shift of his breathing, steady but deeper now, as if something about her presence had unsettled even him. It made no sense. No one had looked at her twice since the ritual. No one had seen her. But he stood there, as if she were the only thing that mattered.
Who is she?
Ronan asked. The question cut cleanly through the silence. A pause followed, too long, too careful. No one of importance, an elder answered quickly. A failed member of the pack. She's of no concern to you. Elira's fingers curled slightly at her sides.
Failed.
The word should have hurt, but after everything, it barely touched her. Ronan didn't respond right away. Instead, Elira felt it, that shift again. Subtle, but unmistakable. His attention didn't waver from her, as if the answer had been given had only deepened whatever he was sensing. No one? He repeated, quieter this time. There was something dangerous in the way he said it. Disbelief. A step closer. Elira's breath caught as the distance between them vanished. She could feel the heat of him now, the quiet intensity of his presence pressing against her senses in a way that made the darkness around her feel thinner, exposed. Look at me, he said. The words were softer this time, but they carried weight. Elira let out a slow breath, steadying herself before lifting her chin again. The blindfold remained firm across her eyes, sealing her in darkness. But standing this close to him, it didn't feel as absolute as it had before. It felt fragile, like something waiting to break. Ronan's gaze moved over her face. She could feel it, sharp and searching, taking in the tear-stained skin beneath the cloth, the tension in her jaw, the quiet strength in the way she held herself despite everything. "This is what you call nothing?" he asked. No one answered, because there was no answer that would satisfy him. Elira swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. "It doesn't matter what they call me." The moment the words left her lips, something shifted again. Closer.
Deeper.
Ronan inhaled slowly, as if her voice had confirmed something he hadn't been able to name before. "What did they do to you?" he asked. The question wasn't political. It wasn't formal. It was personal. Elira's chest tightened. For a second, she almost didn't answer. Almost chose silence again. The same silence they had forced on her. But something about him, about the way he stood there, unyielding and focused only on her, made it harder to hide. "They took my sight," she said quietly. The clearing went still. Even the air seemed to freeze. Ronan didn't move. But the energy around him changed, sharp, controlled, dangerous.
"Why?"
he asked. Elira hesitated. Because this was the line. The one that couldn't be uncrossed. "They said I saw something I shouldn't have," she answered. Behind him, she could feel the tension spike. The elders shifted, their unease no longer hidden. Ronan noticed.
Of course he did.
"And what was that?" he pressed. Elira's fingers tightened slightly, her pulse quickening. This was the moment. The choice. Stay silent, or shatter everything. Her lips parted. But before the words could form, one of the elders stepped forward. "That's enough," he said sharply. "She's confused." The ritual left her unstable.
She doesn't know what she's saying.
The lie hung in the air. Heavy. Desperate. Ronan didn't turn.
Didn't acknowledge him.
Because his attention was still locked on her. Waiting. Watching. For the truth. And for the first time since the darkness took her, Elira felt something dangerous rise within her. Not fear. Not pain. But the fragile, burning edge of something returning. Her voice. The lie lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. Elira could feel it pressing in from all sides, the elders' fear sharpening into something desperate, something dangerous. They weren't just trying to silence her anymore. They were trying to contain something they no longer understood. Ronan still hadn't moved. His presence stood like a wall between her and them, unyielding, immovable. And yet, his attention never left her, not even for a second. "Unstable?" he repeated quietly. There was no anger in his tone. That made it worse. Because beneath it, something colder was forming. "She doesn't know what she's saying," the elder insisted, his voice tightening. "The ritual." "What ritual?" Ronan cut in. Silence.
Sharp.
Immediate. Elira felt it. The moment everything began to fracture. The elder hesitated. And that hesitation was enough. Ronan stepped forward. Close enough that the air between them disappeared completely. Elira's breath faltered as the pull inside her surged, no longer distant or subtle. It was overwhelming now, like something buried deep within her was waking up, responding to him, reaching for him without her permission. Her fingers trembled at her sides.
"What?"
"Are you?" Ronan murmured, almost to himself. The question wasn't meant to wound. It wasn't meant to accuse. It was something else entirely. Recognition. Before she could react, his hand lifted. Slow. Deliberate. Every movement felt heavier than it should have, as if the world itself was watching, waiting.
Then,
his fingers touched her chin.
warm, firm, real.
He tilted her face upward. And the moment their skin connected, everything broke. Not outside. Inside her. The darkness that had consumed her vision didn't vanish. It shattered. Cracks of something brighter tore through it. Not light, not exactly, but something alive. Heat surged through her veins, sharp and electric, racing from the point of contact straight into her core. Elira gasped. Her body went rigid as the void behind her blindfold erupted into motion. Colors she couldn't name exploded through the black. Not seen.
Felt.
Energy pulsed in waves, flooding her senses all at once. She could feel the space around her, shifting, breathing, alive in a way she had never understood before. And him. She felt him, not as a shape, not as a face, but as something vast and burning, gold, powerful, ancient. His presence roared through her awareness like fire, every inch of him radiating strength, dominance, truth. Elira cried out, her hands instinctively gripping his wrist as the force of it overwhelmed her. "What is this?" She choked, her voice breaking. Ronan didn't pull away. If anything, his grip tightened slightly, steadying her. His breath had changed. Sharper now. Controlled.
But barely.
Because he felt it too. The connection. The surge. The impossible reaction that should not have existed. Behind them, panic erupted. "What's happening? Stop this." "She's reacting." But it was too late. The bond had already ignited. The darkness wasn't empty anymore. It was alive. Elira's breathing turned uneven as the chaos of sensation began to settle, not fading, but sharpening, focusing. And within it, she understood. This wasn't her sight returning. This was something else. Something more. Her grip on him steadied as her voice, though trembling, carried something new. "I can feel everything." Ronan's golden gaze burned into her, no longer questioning, knowing. And when he spoke again, his voice held something that made the entire clearing go still. "Whoever did this to you," he said quietly, dangerously, "just made the biggest mistake of their lives." Because the girl they had blinded had just begun to see. Silence didn't fall. It fractured. The moment Elira spoke, the air itself seemed to recoil, like the truth had taken form and no one knew how to contain it. "I can feel everything." Her voice was unsteady, but it carried. Too far. Too clearly. A ripple moved through the pack, subtle at first. Shifting feet, held breaths, glances exchanged in the corners of vision. But beneath it, something darker spread.
Fear.
Not of what she had been, but of what she had become. "That's not possible," one of the elders snapped, too quickly. "The ritual worked?" Ronan finished, his tone quiet but cutting. The elder faltered, and that hesitation, small as it was, landed like a crack in stone. Elira's fingers were still wrapped around Ronan's wrist, but her grip had changed. No longer desperate. Grounded. The chaos inside her had settled into something sharper now. Focused.
Alive.
She turned her head slightly, her blindfolded gaze shifting toward the elders. And for the first time, she didn't feel lost. She felt them. Not their faces. Not their bodies. But something deeper. Their energy flickered in her awareness like distorted flames, uneven, unstable. Where Ronan's presence burned steady and powerful, theirs twisted and broke, jagged with something they were trying to hide.
Guilt.
Corruption.
Rot.
Her breath slowed. "They're lying," she said. The words dropped into the clearing like a stone into still water. Immediate. Unavoidable. The reaction was instant. "Enough." An elder barked, stepping forward. "This ends now." "It already has," Ronan said. He moved then. Not away from her, but slightly in front of her. A shift so subtle, yet so final, that it changed everything. A line drawn. Uncrossable. The pack felt it. Elira felt it. Protection. Possession.
Power.
"She speaks again, and you interrupt her," Ronan continued, his voice low, controlled, but beneath it, something lethal coiled tightly. "Interesting." No one answered. No one dared, because the truth was unraveling too quickly now. Elira could feel it in the air, the tension snapping thread by thread, the careful illusion the elders had built beginning to collapse under its own weight. "They killed him," she said. This time her voice didn't shake. It cut.
Clean. Sharp.
"They took his power," she continued, her head tilting slightly as her awareness sharpened further. "Not for the pack. For themselves. A collective breath caught. Shock. Denial. Recognition. It spread through the gathered wolves like fire through dry leaves. That's a lie. One of the elders shouted, but his voice cracked at the edges. Elira didn't flinch, because now she could feel that too. The fracture. The weakness beneath his words. "You're afraid," she said quietly. The statement wasn't cruel. It was certain. And that made it worse. The elder stepped back before he could stop himself. A mistake. A visible one. The moment it happened, something shifted across the crowd. Doubt crept in where obedience once stood. Eyes that had always looked to the elders for guidance now lingered just a second too long.
Questioning.
Watching. Ronan saw it.
Of course he did.
And when he spoke again, his voice carried across every inch of the clearing. "Your control ends here." No one moved. But everything changed. Because the fear that once belonged to Elira now belonged to them. And for the first time since the night she lost her sight, she wasn't the one in the dark anymore. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was waiting. Elira could feel it. Every heartbeat in the clearing, every flicker of doubt, every fragile thread of control the elders were still clinging to as it unraveled in their hands. They thought they could still contain this. They were wrong. Ronan hadn't moved from in front of her, his presence steady, unshaken, a force that made it impossible for anyone to step forward without consequence. But he didn't speak. He didn't need to. This moment wasn't his. It was hers. Elira drew in a slow breath, grounding herself in the strange, vivid awareness flowing through her. The darkness behind her blindfold was no longer empty. It pulsed with shape and energy, a map of truth she could feel rather than see. And it was enough. "They didn't just kill him," she said. Her voice carried, clear, unwavering. "They drained him." A ripple tore through the crowd. Disbelief collided with recognition, and Elira felt both, sharp, chaotic, impossible to hide from her now. "They used something forbidden," she continued, her head turning slightly toward the elders. "Not the pack's power. Not ours. Something older. Twisted." "No," one of them started. "You bound it to yourselves," Elira cut in. The words landed like fire. She could feel their reactions now. Every spike of panic, every surge of denial. It burned through them, exposing everything they had tried to bury. "You take from those stronger than you," she said, quieter now but more dangerous. "You steal what isn't yours. And you call it leadership." A murmur broke out, louder this time. The pack was no longer silent. "They're lying," someone whispered. "They wouldn't." But she can feel it. The uncertainty spread faster now, feeding on itself, tearing through years of blind loyalty. "Enough," the eldest roared, stepping forward at last. The control in his voice was gone, replaced by something raw.
Desperate.
"She's manipulating you. She's unstable. She's telling the truth." Ronan's voice cut through the chaos like a blade.
Still calm.
Still controlled. But final. The elder froze. And in that single moment, Elira felt it. The last thread snapping. The illusion shattered. "You felt it too," Elira said softly, her attention shifting back to Ronan. "The moment you touched me, it wasn't a question. It didn't need to be." The bond between them pulsed again, stronger now, undeniable. It anchored her, steadied her, made her voice stronger as she turned back to the crowd. "They took my sight because I saw them do it," she said. No hesitation. No fear. They thought if I couldn't see, I couldn't prove it. A pause. Then, quieter. "But I see more now than I ever did before." The weight of that settled over everyone.
Heavy.
Unavoidable. One of the elders stepped back again. Another followed. Small movements. But they spoke louder than anything else. Guilt didn't hide well under truth. Elira took a single step forward. Not blindly. Not uncertainly. But with purpose. "They didn't just betray me," she said. "They betrayed all of you." Her words didn't need force. They didn't need volume. Because now, they burned on their own. And as the pack began to shift, to question, to see the cracks in the power they had once trusted without hesitation, The truth did what it was always meant to do. It spread, it consumed, and it left nothing untouched. The truth didn't fade. It settled. Heavy, unavoidable,
Permanent.
Elira could feel it in the way the air had changed, no longer tense with control, but fractured with realization. The pack stood on the edge of something irreversible, their certainty stripped away, leaving only what remained beneath it.
Doubt.
Anger. And something else. Something that hadn't been there before. Awareness. No one spoke. No one rushed to defend the elders again. Because now they could feel it too. Not the way she could, but enough. Enough to know they had been led by lies. The elders stood at the center of it all, their presence no longer commanding, but shrinking beneath the weight of what had been exposed. The power they had stolen flickered unevenly, unstable under the pressure of being seen. Elira stepped forward. This time, no one tried to stop her. The ground beneath her feet felt steady, not because she could see it, but because she no longer needed to. The darkness was no longer her prison. It was her domain. Every movement around her pulsed with clarity. Every breath, every heartbeat, every shift of energy painted a world more honest than sight had ever been. She stopped a few steps ahead of Ronan. Not behind him, not hidden, beside him. The distinction didn't go unnoticed. A quiet ripple moved through the pack. Ronan turned his head slightly toward her, his presence still vast, still powerful, but no longer overshadowing hers. Matching it, recognizing it. His voice, when it came, carried across the clearing with calm authority. Look at her. No one resisted. They couldn't. And for the first time since the blindfold had been forced over her eyes, they did. Not as something broken, not as something discarded, but as something undeniable. Elira lifted her chin, her posture straight, unwavering. The faint trail of dried tears beneath the cloth no longer spoke of weakness, but of survival, of endurance. You took my sight, she said.
Her voice was steady, clear.
You tried to erase me.
She paused.
Not for effect, but because the weight of it deserved to be felt. But you failed. The words didn't rise. They didn't need to. They settled into the bones of everyone listening. Because they were true. The eldest stepped forward, his composure cracking completely now. You think this changes anything? He snapped, though the edge in his voice betrayed him. Power isn't given because of words. No, Ronan said. One word. Final. Power isn't given, he continued, his gaze hardening. It's recognized. Silence followed. Then, he stepped closer to Elira. Not in front. Not over her. Beside her. And in that single movement, the shift became absolute. The one you tried to bury, Ronan said, his voice carrying to every corner of the clearing, is the only one here who stands in truth. Elira felt it then, not just from him but from the pack itself. The shift. Subtle at first. Then undeniable. Where there had been dismissal, there was now attention. Where there had been indifference, there was now respect. And beneath it all, submission. Not forced. Earned. Her breath steadied as something deep within her settled into place. Not rising. Not fighting. Becoming. She wasn't the girl they had silenced. She wasn't the shadow they had cast aside. She was something else now. Something stronger. Elira took another step forward, her presence quiet, but unshakable. You led through fear, she said softly. Through lies. Her head tilted slightly, her awareness brushing against every fractured piece of power the elders still clung to. I want. No threat. No anger. Just certainty. And somehow that carried more weight than anything else. The elders didn't speak again. Because there was nothing left to say. The pack had already chosen. And as Elira stood there, blindfolded, yet seeing more than anyone else in that clearing ever could, the truth settled into its final form. She had been broken, silenced, erased. But in the end, she had become the one thing they could never control. Not a victim, not a survivor, but something far more dangerous. A queen.